All right, I'm stumped. I think I'm supposed to be.
What do you think?
Well, first of all, and sorry to disappoint you, but Mr. Maleeni's head didn't just magically fall off. It was very carefully sawed. Very slow and exacting work, probably with a fine-tooth meat saw. And check out this little detail. Spirit gum, Mulder. It held the head to the body. Just barely, of course.
So he was murdered?
Well, no. As far as I can tell, this man died of advanced coronary disease.
Natural causes?
Yeah.
So basically he died of a heart attack. Somebody crept up behind him, sawed his head off, and then glued it back on all in the space of 30 seconds. So does that make sense to you?
No. Which makes it even stranger still. Because as far as I can tell, this body has been dead for over a month. I see signs of refrigeration.
And yet he performed yesterday. What a trooper.
Hello and welcome to episode 167 of Most Unwanted, an X-Files podcast. I'm Luke, and I am joined by Daniel Checkley. How you doing, Dan?
I'm not too bad. I don't like you calling me Dan.
That was weird. I went off script there a bit. I don't know what happened.
Just feels weird. It doesn't feel right. But yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Managed to get a bit of airflow in here today. I don't know if anybody else. Well, I imagine a lot of people in the world are having this heat wave just hitting them at the moment. Which it's not fun. When you're in our houses anyway, which we've kind of been over, I guess, before.
It's just so hot. This summer. I don't like to be the guy that like moans about the weather, especially not hot weather, because you don't want to be the guy that's like, oh god, I don't like the summer days. And I'm not like that. Like I like going out. I like enjoying the sun, but this summer has just confirmed to me why I enjoy winter a hell of a lot more. Because there's nothing like being able to warm yourself up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't mind it the day, it's the night. That's the worst, isn't it? When you just can't sleep. That's when it's the worst. But again, this is just because we just don't have aircon in there. We've got a big fan, and that's about it.
Yeah. I know a few people that have had an aircon installed, which is feels like wild for the UK.
Crazy.
But
yeah.
You know what? I'm considering it.
Yeah. Do you know what I've been doing recently? I after the last episode, because it was a sequel episode, and I think I mentioned at the time to go back to the episode. I was like, do you know what? I've not listened to one of our older episodes, so I actually went back and listened to episode 41, I think it was.
Oh yeah. It was at the first one of the last two-parter.
Yeah. Wild. Like, I didn't have a house at that point. Like,
we've said this before, isn't it?
Okay.
It's good. This podcast is going to be a great little archive of the last 4 years.
It's crazy. Like, this different stuff that like that goes past. Like, recently to archive it some more, we've just set an actual date for the wedding. Now we've paid deposit and everything, which is scary when you look at the cost of it and stuff like that. But yeah, there's another step now, and it's like, Jesus, like this. We've just got round to the sequel episode of this, and this last time we had Donny Faster in it was I literally didn't own my own house, so stuff has changed a lot.
It's crazy, man, crazy.
Yeah. Have you been doing up to anything this last few weeks, or?
No, I've just basically been surviving. Very busy at work, so yeah, not really a lot. You know what? All my spare time has gone into watching The Boys recently.
Yes.
Which I know you spoke about a few weeks back. I got a few recommendations. It's always been in my sort of like periphery almost, but like I've never just sort of settled down and watched any of it. And then I watched 3 seasons in 2 weeks. Oh my god, what a show. What a show.
Yeah, I've recently been catching up myself as well. I sort of wanted to, but it's one of those when you don't have somebody to talk about explicitly with about it, you kind of just go, oh, I'll just watch it whenever. But as soon as you, like somebody else starts it, you're like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to get onto this. Funnily enough, Stranger Things didn't do that for me. I don't know why. Like
Yeah.
everybody in the world is talking about that one. I was like, I started watching one episode. I was like, oh, I'm gonna keep watching this, and then I don't know what it is, so it just stopped me. But yeah, The Boys, I'm all about at the moment.
It's very good.
Yeah,
very good show. I definitely recommend it for anybody out there that's into that sort of thing. It's sort of like a warped take on superheroes, which is always a good shout. But yeah, apart from that, like, that's literally all I've been doing. I've just been working and then getting home and just melting whilst I watch The Boys.
Well, I don't think we need to go on any more about what we've been doing. What we've been doing is watching some crazy magic tricks in the form of the Amazing Maleeni. Shall we get into this episode? So this episode, as I mentioned in the intro, is the Amazing Maleeni. It's episode 8 of season 7. It was directed by Thomas J. Wright, written by everyone, basically. It was written by Vince Gilligan, John Shaban, and Frank Spotnitz. There's an interesting bit to that in the production notes. I'll bring it up here, actually. Basically, I won't read the full production notes, but Frank Spotnitz started with the idea because apparently from series 2 onwards, he's wanted to do an episode about magic and tricks. And then just never got round to it. So John Shaban had some input, and then eventually fell to Vince Gilligan, who was tasked with writing it. So they've kind of all passed on this idea down until eventually Vince Gilligan wrote it.
Like an evolution of an idea. Yeah,
basically. We'll probably get into more detail on it because I think Vince Gilligan has some comments on the writing process of it. But yeah, that's sort of why it's all 3 of them. And the original air date was January the 16th, 2000. So we start at Santa Monica Pier, and we see this magician arrive in this really beat-up van, absolutely worn down, and we see on the side it says the Amazing Maleeni. He is basically already, as soon as he gets there, is kind of grifted out of half of his pay. So you can kind of tell that this is a down on his luck kind of magician performing on a pier to barely anybody really. But he starts his performance and starts just doing cup and ball tricks, simple magic tricks. And we see this guy heckling him as well, who we later find out is Billy LeBeau. Is it LeBonge or LeBeau?
LeBonge.
I've written it down there, and I'm terrible with French sounding names. I always just say them as they're literally pronounced, and they're never right. But in this case, yeah, it's Billy LeBonge.
It's another problem with having episodes, having a character pop up for literally 40 minutes and then never see them again. You can't. It's not like you can sort of get to know these characters and sort of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, basically the only time I hear their name and it goes in one ear and out the other because I know. They ain't going to well, they might do, but unlikely.
The amount of times I get to record these episodes and I forget the name, and I was I'm relying on IMDb or something like that to tell me the name of the character, because you just don't have to you don't take it in, you know what I mean?
You know him as the other magician guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically. That's all you need,
yeah.
But yeah, we don't know he's a magician at this point, obviously. So a bit of a spoiler there. But he's heckling Maleeni. Really arrogant, really unlikable from the off, this guy.
Yeah, he's the worst. He's just, it's not even good heckling.
No.
It's just being an arsehole is what it is.
He's one of those people who, he seems like one of those people as well who is contrarian just because, you know what I mean? They're oh, everything sucks. And it's yeah, cool, man. As an aside, before we carry on with this, I absolutely love stories about magic. I don't know why, but they always interest me. Every time, because it's that kind of, it's kind of like a heist story. You know what I mean? I always find magic, and I mean this essentially turns into that. But this kind of trick on somebody, you know what I mean, and how they pull the wool over somebody's eyes. I always find that really interesting with magic.
The heist comparison is really apt, I think, just in the sense of the reason why stories like this are so good, and you've got other examples, what was that one with Jesse Eisenberg?
Catch Me If You Can, is it?
No, that was.
Oh no, yeah, that's
Now You See Me.
Now You See Me, yeah.
just stuff like that, and then like any film that has like this sort of, especially magicians as like the sort of main plot, it always tends to be heist-like in the sense of the audience is left to try and figure out what's going on. And I do like they play on that throughout this episode of like this sort of diverting attention one way so that we look the other, and that's essentially what they try and do this entire episode of divert the audience, as in me and you, our attention away from the actual real plot line. And it's just a very clever way of filming.
Yeah, I thought so too. An aside, I can't believe that the sequel to Now You See Me is not called Now You Don't. It's called like Now You See Me Too, isn't it? It's like, what? Why ruin that chance?
Yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like one of those where, do you know, like,
guys.
Yeah, do you know, like, what's it called? The Edge of Tomorrow. The original title for that is called Live, Die, Repeat, or something like that. It's like, oh, that's a cool title, and I was like, no, we can't have it that. We want it Edge of Tomorrow. It sounds like the same kind of thing on that side, where it's like, so that was the original idea, and the marketing was going, no, we need it to franchise, so we need it to have the same name.
People won't know it's the same film. Yeah,
because everyone's an idiot, apparently, according to marketing people. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, this guy keeps heckling him, and basically encourages him to give out an actual trick. He's saying that this is all like hokey stuff. Actually do an impressive trick. So this guy, I liked his showmanship actually, of like just talking about these, like the history of magic and stuff like that. But he goes on to this trick that only 4 people have ever done. And
ever
attempted, yeah, and they've all died, is what he says. So he then goes to he proceeds to spin his head completely around, which
it's an incredible trick. I thought the trick of having the worst CGI in the history of television. What a trick.
I read a bit later on that says it's not CGI, and it's like, but it looks like CGI, like, you know what I mean? Or at least the way they've stitched it together is like,
whatever effect they've used looked horrendous. It looked so bad, it takes you completely out of the scene, and they insist on showing a replay of it later, and it's why?
Do you know what? In fairness to it, the second one didn't look as bad because it was like at a distance, you know what I mean? Like on a handy cam. I didn't mind that one so much, but when it's front and center, you're like, this doesn't look great. Especially when it's followed up by some really good practical effects.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Yeah.
I didn't
don't understand it.
Yeah, I would have preferred this if they'd have actually just made it more like the practical effect, even more like prominent in the turning of the head. Like, I don't know, it's some kind of, not claymation, but you know what I mean? Like it went like a weird, like sort of, I'd prefer it like that than what it ended up as. But hey, this is the year 2000. Maybe that this was the best we could get at this time.
Maybe, but then don't film it straight on. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Something about this, I was just like, come on. I know you can do better than this. I've seen you do better than this.
Yeah. I mean, it straight away, my first note on this was like, that wasn't a good effect, at all. But he does this trick in front of everyone. They're all applauding. They're amazed at what he's done. The guy who booked him can't believe his luck that he's just performed this trick for him. And Billy goes off in a huff. He throws his cup in the bin, which sort of becomes a point, which at the time obviously it just seems like nothing, but that becomes a point of the investigation later on. And then Maleeni goes off. The guy says, "Oh, well, I'll go and get your pay." Comes back to give him his pay in the van, and Maleeni's head falls off and rolls on the floor. And this is the intro. We leave off with this. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought this was good. Again, effects aside, it was just one of those that it kind of made me just laugh more than anything else.
Yeah.
I was interested to see. I kind of got the gist that we was going to get sort of like sleight of hand. Is this magic? Well, not even is this magic. We know this isn't magic. So let's figure out how they did it. And I got a feeling we were going to get that throughout the episode, which we kind of did.
Pretty much, yeah.
And so, yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing how this episode played out.
Yeah, I think from the setup of it, I was really intrigued. Just without setup, as you said, the computer effect wasn't great, but it was quite a minor point in the rest of the setup.
Yeah.
I thought so. Yeah, I was interested in where it was going. So then we get the intro. Mulder and Scully are going over the case. They basically just recap exactly what we've just seen, and then they realize that one of the people there was this Billy guy. So they go to find him. They find out he's also a magician, and they go to question him at his place of work. I don't know. It's like this abandoned club. I'm not sure where this is actually.
They just introduce themselves, and he's just there working alone, doesn't even bat an eyelid.
Yeah.
This scene's really interesting, and I like this scene because it started off like a long-running trend throughout this episode of just people doing tricks for Mulder and Scully, and it's just us watching the tricks.
Did you rewind this to try and see if you could figure out how he did the coin tricks?
No, I didn't. Well, this is the thing. I'm a big fan of like little magic and little tricks like that. Not because I believe in magic, but because I think it's very talented how people manage to sort of perform these tricks. I'm not as impressed with it on TV because especially when there's like cuts between characters, because you can fake magic like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if it's in front of me, I'll be like watching like a hawk, but I kind of just sort of, I don't really switch on to the actual trick when I'm watching it on TV.
I was trying to see if it was just a sleight of hand trick or if it was editing. I couldn't tell, but I literally couldn't see any movement of the coin, so who knows at that point. Yeah, it could have been edited. I always remember there was an episode of it was the show that Mitch Pileggi narrates. What's it called? The Masked Magician.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a trick, and he was like, he's going to make a tank disappear, and I'm like, whoa, how is he going to do this? And literally, the trick was the tank's there. They put up a blanket, and the camera is actually on like a rig that moves it to the side, where there's an exact setup of where this tank is, but without the tank, obviously. And it's like, that's not a trick. That's just like a camera slid across. You know what I mean?
It is a trick.
I mean, it makes you believe. It makes me believe then. But same thing for you though. Like on TV, it's kind of like, oh, I guess, yeah, it's just like they moved it. But like when it's actually like somebody is like, if they'd have like, I don't know, you slide a tank away or something like that. I don't know. If you could have like sort of actually moved the tank in some way, I'd be like, oh, fair enough. That's interesting. But yeah, I wasn't too impressed with this one. But yeah, like when it's like street magic and stuff like that, and it's people doing it in front of you, it's like, okay, that's really interesting because you ain't editing that. You're literally standing there watching.
It's all sleight of hand. It's all skill. Yeah.
I also liked the before we carry on with this scene, I really liked the banter between Mulder and Scully at the beginning of this episode and throughout, to be honest.
Agreed.
They've always had this banter between them anyway, but it definitely feels much more playful since, I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into it. It feels much more playful since the kiss, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can sort of see that. I mean, but then they've got that in them, especially in these later episodes where they'll be going back and forth. But yeah, I did enjoy this myself. I particularly enjoyed it during these scenes where they're just watching magic tricks, and more often than not, you'll get like any plot stops and Mulder and Scully just sort of start really enjoying magic. Like that's you for 5 minutes you're just watching Mulder and Scully be amazed by magic.
Yeah, pretty much. And to be honest, again, just taking something else from the production notes. From what I read, that's basically what happened. This guy and the Maleeni are actual magicians, like quite famous magicians. So they were just doing magic for everybody. And so it was constantly them just sitting watching them do tricks and being amazed by how they do tricks and stuff like that. So I'd imagine a lot of the reactions are probably fairly genuine.
Yeah, I dare say they were.
But yeah, so anyway, carrying on with this. So yeah, they're interviewing this Billy. Again, he's still arrogant. He starts basically making a point of how to some people Mozart and I can't remember the other guy. This shows everything really about what he's trying to say. But he says that Mozart and there's another musician from the same time. People aren't able to tell the difference apart from people who are incredibly well versed in their types of music and stuff like that. Basically, to try and say, to everybody else, this Maleeni's a great magician, but to an actual sort of connoisseur, he's just a rip off and just a con man essentially. Um, so they don't really get too much out of him at this point, other than the fact that he doesn't like this guy. But he's got an alibi, I think, hasn't he? So there's no way he could have done it, essentially.
Well, he also mentions the gambling debts as well.
Yes, yeah.
Which is basically, I don't think he like really clears himself. He just kind of points them in another direction they can look.
Yeah, which obviously, when you know the end of the story, it's so carefully choreographed that they're both sort of pointing you in a direction, kind of like a big magic trick. They're misdirecting you to this certain path to take, so they can sort of
I want you to, as an aside to sort of going through this episode, I want you to tell me the point in which you realised the plot or close enough to the plot. Okay, so the point at which you figured it out.
Figured it out in terms of that.
What was actually going on, or close enough. Not every detail, but
the definitely the part where they were robbing or they were planning to set up a big heist of the money electronically. That took a while, if I'll be completely honest. But anyway, so yeah, they go and carry on doing an autopsy on Maleeni, or who they think is Maleeni. They find that the head has actually been carefully sawed off, but that's not how he died. How he died is a heart attack, essentially, and they find that the head has basically been glued back on.
Great practical effects here.
Yeah.
Superb. Yeah. Like, this looked great. This genuinely looked great.
It's when it sits still, it's brilliant. And Scully also finds evidence that this guy has been dead for at least a month, and he's been sort of kept cold and sort of frozen. But they said they can't really work this out because the manager of this pier had already spoke to him seconds before his head fell off.
Yeah.
So this is where they sort of theorize that maybe this isn't actually Maleeni, that maybe there's another Maleeni, which we'll come back to. And this is where, spoilers to anyone who is... Shall I carry on? I'm just thinking.
I don't know what you're going to say.
If anyone has never seen The Prestige, turn it off now. But I mean, it's quite an old film.
Yeah, that's an old film. I don't think we can worry about that.
Again, that kind of magician-y story, The Prestige, and it has a very similar plot in terms of there's two people basically, and that's their big trick, is concealing this fact that there's two of them doing it.
Yeah, exactly. There's definite elements of that. But again, I think it's just that sort of like that weird out of left field solution to things that you don't immediately think of. You know what I mean? Like they very much set this up as how is he still alive after twisting his own neck, and then how did he die instantly, rather than thinking about different bodies. That's
exactly
that leads into that. But funnily enough, I like the sort of the misdirect of leading you that way into thinking it, and then pulling it back again. Of like, no, it wasn't a switch body. It was just literally a corpse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And until Mulder later on makes a brave gambit to try and prove it, which we'll get to. We see Billy go to this really dingy-looking snooker hall or pool hall. I don't know what it's called in America. And he meets up with this obvious gangstery-looking dude called Sissy Alvarez, who's got his henchmen all there. And this guy, bald as brass, Billy, goes up to him and basically says, I know Maleeni owed you money, and I know he's still in debt to you. I killed him, or I offed him, basically. I can get you your money back, and with extra, basically. Sort of, and we don't see at this point what he's doing, but he's pointing him in the direction of the bank. Obviously he knows he's got a twin brother. And then he also does this like magic trick to try and like because he wants help with his magic, he says, and then to prove that he's a magician, he like lights his hand on fire or something. This was where it confused me for a bit, and I was like, "Oh, is he actually like magic, or is this like that's the way it's going to go?"
Yeah, he lifted the notebook that the guy
That
was
was it.
using, Alvarez was using, didn't he? And
Yeah,
the notebook was on fire.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which we later find out was part of the overall scheme to get the piece of paper from the notebook.
Yes, yeah.
Don't know how he turned it on fire. There's a lot of tricks in this episode where for an episode that centers around misdirection and sort of like, oh, this we don't know how this happened, and then we explain it to you and at the end step by step, and that's the big climax of it. There's a lot of tricks that don't get explained.
Yeah.
That neck turning never gets explained, and we just like, have to accept that that's happened.
Well, Scully knows what to do.
Oh God. Can we get to that? Because we missed that, didn't we, during the end?
Yeah, there's two things in the thing that I missed. One, this guy managed to pilfer this Billy managed to pilfer their FBI badges.
Yeah, for a
and
second.
it's what we think is this sort of I can trick you and steal your stuff. It becomes a much bigger thing later on. And also, I'll let you explain it.
Well, to prove that it's not a big deal to turn your neck around, he basically puts his hand on the floor and rotates it 360 degrees. Now, I'm not ashamed to say, Luke, I tried this.
And now
did you try it?
You broke your wrist.
I got it. Did you try this?
I have not tried it, no.
It's the easiest thing in the world. Where's the trick? It's not even tough. Right, make a note of this now. We can cut all this out, the empty silence. Go and try it now and see what you think. If you put your hand back this way first...
Is it that way first?
Yeah, and then twist it round. It's easy. It's not even difficult.
Yeah, it's not too hard, really, is it?
No, there's no trick there.
I just did it on the table, by the way. I might leave a little bit of that in because there's you can hear me do it, basically. Yeah. I mean, it's not too hard of a trick to do, I guess, but yeah.
I just thought, like, and the smug grin.
Head.
Yeah, the smug grin of like, see. I'm like, you didn't prove anything. All you did was prove that you can do a slightly or a less impressive trick.
Yeah, it's kind of like the thumb thing, do you know? And it's did it like that thing. That's like, is that it? Like, yeah, it's not really a trick at that point, is it? But anyway, this guy was convinced this is how you twist your head as well at the same time. So anyway, proven. There we go, sorted. But yeah, he sets his hand or sets this wallet on fire, and yeah, it confused me a bit because at this point I was like, "Oh, is this?" Because it's X-Files, I immediately thought, "Oh, is he actually like a magician? Like can actually do magic?"
A magic
kind of thing.
user, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it might go down that road, and it doesn't in the end, which I'm kind of glad it doesn't because I prefer this kind of like magician kind of trick kind of thing. So Mulder and Scully go to the bank where they've learned that Maleeni has a twin brother, Albert Pinchbeck, and he looks exactly like him, twin brother, hence. Yeah. And he's even wearing a neck brace, which they immediately think is suspect. That this guy twisted his head off, apparently, and then this guy's.
There's not a big leap to make there.
Yeah. And he says, no, I got this in a car accident in Mexico. But Mulder is sort of pushing the case. He thinks, this is just a cover. You did this trick. You've covered for your brother. And you're wearing the neck brace now because, I don't know, he's hurt his neck or something. To which Albert rolls backwards on his wheelchair and you see that he's got no legs or appears to have no legs.
Yeah.
Because we find out that he's allegedly lost these in a accident in the car accident in Mexico as well. So Mulder looks a bit red in the face at this.
Yeah.
But after this, they leave, and Sissy Alvarez arrives at the bank. In his sort of in his like trademark black leather jacket, which comes into it as well. I wondered like why he's got this all of a sudden like new outfit on, but yeah, that all comes into it as well. And he basically tries to threaten Pinchbeck into helping him steal the money this vault, or basically get money from the bank.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to shake him down. I don't
Yeah.
think he's necessarily trying to plan the heist. I think he's just basically saying, this was his debt, now it's on you. You've got to pay me back.
Yeah. I can't remember if it's before this or after this, but there's also a scene which is important as well. A lot is skipped out in the notes that I've taken, but like I feel like they're important in explaining the greater mystery of what's happening. And basically, yeah, they it doesn't so there's a scene where basically they're showing a gun off, or the security guard is showing his gun off to Albert, who sort of said he just feigns interest in it, basically.
Yeah, when they come to collect the money, it's like the security guards that have got the drive the armored car.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is where I figured the plot out, because I'm trying to sort of I was trying to sort of figure out, like, once I realised I've got to like look at it for everything and keep my eye on things. As soon as he said, "Oh, let me have a look at this," I was like, "Well, why does he need to see the gun?" Yeah. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, "Okay, this guy's in on it. Then he's doing something with this gun, and he's in it." And then as soon as the security guards later in the episode shoots the guy in the back, I'm like, "Okay, so he's not dead. So whoever's in that van is part of it." And it's all started to come together for me at this point,
exactly,
because I saw the gun, but.
I think as soon as you realised he had a twin, like the Prestige was just playing in my head. That's all I saw. So I was like, that's got to come into it some. And I'd like, when they said he's got no legs, I was like, oh, maybe there. But I was like, no, there's something about that. You know what I mean? Like that. I stuck with it. In which, I didn't get the gun bit. I didn't know what that was, to be honest. I knew there was something weird about it, but I couldn't figure out what he'd done until later on. But what we find out is he swaps the magazines for blanks, and somebody who we don't see initially gets into the back of the van because they say that there's something wrong with the differential in the back, which I now know what that is. I did some research. So it's like a set of gears that control how fast the wheels move. So like the wheels can move at separate speeds, like when you're turning corners and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the wheels go at the same speed as you turn, you'll just like spin off. Yeah. So they slow the wheels down, which I never knew. I've heard it. We've probably mentioned before. Got into F1 quite big recently, and I keep hearing them mention differentials or rear diff and stuff like that, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. I've heard it, but I have no idea. But it's like these gears that control it. But
okay,
you're living there. Wiki simple, that was. I went on the normal wiki and I was like, that's too complex. Wiki simple. But we find out there's something going wrong with this van. They go into the back and there's a guy in there who is wearing the same leather jacket. I think he's got a mask on his face, so we can't see his face, but we see these tattoos that are on his hand seem to match Sissy's. So at this point, you think, oh, it's Sissy in the back of the van. The guy holds him up. He doesn't sort of put his hands up and goes to. It looks like he's going to draw a weapon.
Yeah.
So this guy shoots at him, goes to call for help, comes back, and the person who shot has disappeared. So at this point, you can put two and two together that I don't think this guy's been shot somehow. So with this, we I think they reveal it at this point, don't they? Or
you see him wiping the tattoos off.
Yeah.
So it starts to sort of come together as like, okay, this is part of a bigger scheme.
Yeah. So at this point now, you know that Billy's in on something as well. Whether they're working together, we aren't sure, but there's some kind of somebody's running a plan here. Mulder is investigating, or Mulder and Scully investigating this attempted robbery, and he starts to think that something's not right with Albert or his story. So Mulder reckons that he's faking it, that he's got
the boldest play you will ever see.
Yeah, I mean, if this is wrong, whoa, you've got a lot of apologizing to do.
You've got to hand in your badge, I think, at that point.
Yeah. So Mulder wheels him forcibly wheels him from his office into another room and then just buckets him out of his seat. Luckily for Mulder, the guy falls forward and we see that he does have legs. He's been faking it, which is kind of what we assumed. And we find out that this guy is actually Maleeni, and he goes into the story and basically explains that he does owe Alvarez a lot of money, and his brother actually died of a heart attack, so he saw this as some kind of like opportunity to sort of try and escape from this debt, by basically swapping lives, and also having one last great trick as well, to sort of being remembered by. But obviously, with this is fraud.
Yeah. This is the thing. I think this is what this episode does really well, because this is essentially the end of the investigation. Like, you find out exactly what's happened, but then the episode goes on to reveal a bigger plot, and then a bigger plot, and there's always more in the works, which you never quite get the feeling that you're 100% of what's going on. Even Mulder and Scully aren't 100% of what's going on a lot of the time. Even at the end, I would say they're still like putting bits and pieces together.
Yeah. So because of this, they call in like the security from the work. Everyone's pissed off with Maleeni because he's been lying to get like not only to sort of escape this his old life, but he's also using it to get like sympathy in his current life and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they check that he doesn't have access to. They mention, what are they called now? EFTs, electronic fund transfers. And they go through all of the stuff that you would need to get an EFT out, basically, because he doesn't have access to the system. So they say like to check it, basically, they would need a badge ID from the FBI,
a federal badge,
federal badge, and they would also need what's the other thing they need now? I can't remember. Fingerprints. That's it.
Yeah.
So without that, he can't do anything, and also the FBI can't get in there. So they need to call a warrant and all this stuff. But again, that sort of adds more to the plot for later on.
Yeah, I didn't pick up anything on this part until like much later. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea as well what it was alluded to. I thought they would just check in to make sure that he hadn't nicked anything, which made sense. Meanwhile, we see Billy is calling in somebody for having a gun, and then goes into to Alvarez's sort of hideout. Basically, starts. I can't remember what he does in this part, but basically ends up getting threatened by Sissy because he thinks he's being set up. That's it now. For this security van robbery. So they go to sort of kill him, but he pulls a gun on them, runs out of the of this bar, and as he runs down the street, the call that he'd just made to the police gets himself arrested because they think he is the man with the gun. And this is when
you start to see like the puzzle pieces coming together.
That something doesn't add up. You know what I mean? Like, why would he call?
Exactly, especially when they go into the cell and they're like knocking on the door, and it's like, okay, here we go. These two have been working together all along, and they sort of they acknowledge that each of them is there, so they both meant to be locked up. Which is when you start to realize, okay, so there's more to this plot. It's not like they've been caught out. They both wanted to be here.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, they both end up in prison. The perfect alibi. I like how they do the. It always reminds me of Roger Rabbit, where they do the shaving a haircut thing on the wall to let them know. Yeah. But yeah, so they're in jail now, and we also see that Sissy has been arrested for holding up the van from earlier. We do see earlier on as well that the bank has been cleared out, the vault's been cleared out, and nobody has any clue of how this has been done. They go to arrest Sissy for this and the attempted robbery of the van. Lo and behold, they look in the sort of crawl space above the in the ceiling, and all of the money from the vault falls out. almost
convenient.
Yeah, very convenient. Why would he hide it there? You know what I mean? Like, what a stupid place to hide it. He immediately knows that he's been set up and he's been framed, and sort of is shouting his innocence, which I think definitely rings true with Mulder and Scully. They know that this is too easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I also think Mulder and Scully kind of are happy just to get this guy off the street. They're ethically
Yes,
not great in this episode, Mulder and Scully, because like they go ahead with the plan, and I get it. They're kind of like basically going, well, a bad guy's gone to jail, and as long as you two naughty boys stay out of trouble, we'll let you go, even though we know you did it.
It's like, yeah, but this guy didn't do anything wrong, essentially. You know?
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
exactly, and like it's still a crime. Like they've still committed a crime, even if you can't decide who's good and who's bad. Also, I mean, I know this is. You know what? I'll get to it later when you mention it.
But I mean, it's sort of trying to wrap it up at this point because Mulder and Scully go to confront the two magicians who are now being released on bail. I don't know who paid their bail. I guess themselves. I don't know who you do.
This gets very, very washy. Like, no one. We don't know who paid the bail. Like, as far as we're aware, they've not got any other acquaintances. And then on top of that, Mulder sort of suggests to them that they've set all of this up just to get back at is it Cece? Sorry,
Sissy or
Sissy.
I think so. Yeah,
and they set all of this up just to get back at him because obviously he served time with one of them, and there's this whole grand plan, and part of that plan is them doing the magician thing and getting out of jail overnight, but they've got the perfect alibi. And I was like, whoa, let's hold up 1 second. Just getting out of jail. There's no cameras. There's no guards. There's nothing. Like, it was that easy. You got into jail. You got out of jail for an entire night. Walked straight back in. I was like, a bit of a weird thing to just wash over that for me.
Yeah. It does get a bit loose with the sort of explanation here, but as with anything magic based, you go, it's magic, isn't it?
It's magic.
Even if it's magic. Even if it's not actual magic, it's magic. But yeah, as you mentioned, he goes through this entire plan, but he also tells Scully that he thinks that actually they're playing a bigger trick, that all of this setup with Alvarez is just some kind of misdirection.
Yeah.
And they basically Mulder's taken out Maleeni's wallet, and he collected it from the evidence to take it away from him, because as we find out, that they need a badge number and a thing and a thumbprint to gain access to this EFT system. I feel like I'm doing a disservice to the plot, but with like heist plots, it's quite hard to go into a detail without having to actually have seen it.
The whole point of the episode, the climax of the episode, is the explanation of how they've done this trick. Mm-hmm. So in order for you to do it justice, you would have to go back through the episode. Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah. It's difficult to do. I mean, obviously, I'm expecting most people listening to this will have watched the episode, so they know how it's done. But again, quite a clever plan. They explain how he got the card, how he got the to get the thumbprint, how he got there, everything we've kind of explained, basically. And they would have been able to basically make off with $1.8 million in this EFT. So this basically just shows that, they could have done a lot more damage.
Naughty boys, don't do it again.
And this is basically the end of the episode. So Mulder and Scully leave the jail, and this is where Scully shows off her trick as well, how she can turn her hand around 360. When Scully asks to explain how she did that and how that relates to him turning his head, she just says, it's magic, and then we that's true, and then we walk away. And
walk away to sunset.
What do you think of the episode?
I think this was a great episode, to be honest. I really enjoyed it. What didn't take itself too seriously, was nice, light, interesting, and that's very important in a especially anything to do with magic and tricks and stuff like that. You can so easily be so caught up on like how the trick works that it's almost like what they were saying in the show, that like the trick is only half the job. It's the charisma and the showmanship. That's what makes it great. And very similar to magic episodes of TV or films, you can get so caught up on the trick that you forget that the narrative and the plot needs to be like really tight. But I thought it was really, really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. Was it perfect? No, there was definitely there's weird little like threads that we don't really pull on all the way through the episode, and some bits didn't make sense. CGI was terrible for the first trick, but it didn't really matter. I don't think it took away from the episode, and I enjoyed it.
That's the thing. I think ultimately this is just like a fun one-off episode. I liked Mulder and Scully throughout this, but had this like kind of playful kind of nature to them, and like we see, as you mentioned, we see that in the sort of fun episodes anyway, that they have this kind of bantery kind of relationship when they're like this. And yeah, I really like the mystery of how it was always like, oh, there's one more thing that you've missed, and it's always constantly this next twist, which is whenever you watch anything about magic, that's always what it is, you know what I mean? Like, and there's always one big trick at the end that's they've seeded through it, and so yeah, I kind of liked that it had this kind of feel of being a big magic show, essentially.
Yeah,
I just thought it was a lot of fun.
Luke's production notes.
The Amazing Maleeni was inspired by executive producer Frank Spotnitz's long-standing desire for an episode to deal solely with magic and illusion. Spotnitz had been championing this idea since he first joined the series' writing staff during season 2. Eventually, during the 7th season, Gilligan was assigned to write the episode, something he described as agony. Gilligan explained the episode started with Frank because he, for several years, had wanted to write an episode about magicians. Frank was a fan of the TV show The Magician with Bill Bixby, so I believed that was part of it. But Frank was interested in the idea of magic and the idea of fooling people who wished to be fooled. So there you go. He didn't elaborate on why it was agony, but I imagine this and like heist stories, must be an absolute pain to write because you have to start at the end and figure out how you get in everywhere, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I can't imagine it being, especially if it's not your passion project.
Yeah, exactly. Spotnitz's favourite magician, Ricky Jay, was sought for the part of the Amazing Maleeni. Unfortunately, the crew discovered that neither Jay nor the show's backup magician, David Blaine, like how he was the backup, were available for shooting. Series creator Chris Carter, however, later stated that the show would not take no for an answer. We got on the phone with him. We agreed to come to our offices and talk about the script, and he ended up doing some card tricks that reduced Frank and I to being 6 years old again. After discussion, Jay agreed to guest star in the episode with the stipulation that he only be asked to do the tricks he was accustomed to doing. Gilligan, in retrospect, later noted there was no choice other than Ricky Jay. As far as we were concerned, he was not looking forward to the idea of playing a magician because he felt that magicians were never portrayed very realistically in movies or television shows.
Wait, who did he play? Did he play Maleeni or
Maleeni? Yeah, Ricky Jay played Maleeni. Yeah, the other guy is a magician as well. I don't have the actor's name down in front of me, but he was also a magician. I've not seen him in anything. Ricky Jay kind of looks familiar. Like there's something about him that looks familiar, but I don't know where I've seen him. You know what I mean? Okay. The cast and crew of the episode enjoyed the amusement park feel of the story. Gillian Anderson later noted, because of all the magic, I was constantly being entertained. The difficulty with something like this is you have a tendency to forget that people are still having bad things happen to them. Anderson later stated that she and Duchovny had to keep reminding themselves that they were dealing with a murder, even though many of their lines were supposed to be flippantly delivered.
It is a good point when you think of like, especially like the first sort of 20 minutes of the episode where at this point they don't know what's happened. They don't know it's not a murder. And so when they're just like, oh, funny little card trick you got there, like it does feel a little bit out of place. But again, kind of fits the theme of the episode. Yeah. Like you don't really mind it.
I don't know. I've always found that like they have a kind of gallows humor to them anyway. Mulder and Scully do. Like, I mean, they see death that many times that it kind of doesn't faze them, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. A perfect example is when Mulder gives this big hypothesis of what he thinks happened, and he rolled back in his wheelchair and I wish that was the truth.
Mm.
And then as they was walking out, Mulder just goes, ooh. It was like he just like, oh, I've put my foot in it there, Scully. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. That's the thing. Like they have this kind of dark humor to them anyway, so it doesn't bother me too much when they're joking about essentially a murder. They're not literally laughing in his family's face. You know what I mean?
Agreed,
Like,
yeah,
there's
exactly.
the difference between like being offensive, but yeah. And finally, the episode used several special effects. Although, in order to ensure the episode felt camera real, many of the more intense effects were performed through conventional rather than digital means. For instance, the scene where Bill LeBonge's hand erupts into flames was created with the help of stuntman rather than through expensive and ultimately less convincing CGI effects. The scene featuring the Amazing Maleeni turning his head 360 degrees was created using a prosthetic head constructed of John Vulich's optical nerve studio. So apparently it was a prosthetic, but I mean, it didn't look like it.
While if that's the case, it doesn't even look like a prosthetic.
Maybe they did a George Lucas and went back in afterwards and changed it.
Maybe, yeah.
Jar Jar Binks in the background or something. Yeah, I don't know. I mean that. The fire one didn't really bother me. Like, I mean, if that wasn't CGI,
that
that's
looked
fine.
alright.
Yeah, all the effects in it look fine, apart from the head tilting one. That's the only one that looks obviously wrong. But anyway, but that was production notes. Do you have some tweets?
Welcome to Dan's Twitter Corner.
Quite a few tweets over the last about the last few episodes. Steve Gregory got in touch. Said, "Have to say, I wasn't massively taken with Rush. It felt a bit out of place in season 7. I think it seemed more like a season 1 or 2 episode. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of when Glenn Morgan and James Wong returned to the writing team in season 4. The show had moved on in their absence, and their new episodes seemed dated and lackluster. Rush has that same energy for me." Thank you for getting in touch, and yeah, I think that's a great little parallel, to be honest.
Yeah.
With Rush, it did feel like a season 1 Monster of the Week.
That's the thing. There was no, like, we've kind of got away from that, where Monster of the Weeks now, even if they are a simple story, like kind of like Hungry, you know what I mean? That's quite a simple Monster of the Week story from, written down on paper. But because they turn it on its head to have him as the protagonist, essentially, instead of the antagonist, there's a switch around, and it feels a bit more unique and has a bit more layers to it. And I think there's a lot like that, like the this season alone, like the Goldberg variation, the Monster of the Week. There's no monster. The monster is the gangsters. You know what I mean? Like, so
I think on top of that, I think Steve makes a really good point in the sense of when he mentioned the show moving on. Because there is a fine balance to be had in all long-running shows like this, but especially X-Files with the fan base it got. Because you've got to evolve, you've got to move on with the times, but also you've got to stay faithful to what people fell in love with in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is a fine line. There is always going to be that temptation just to go back to your good old Monster of the Weeks, where it's a good old, like the similar format to what you're used to. That temptation's always going to be there because it's a safety net. Yeah. Whereas in actual fact, you probably don't increase the quality unless you push yourself and try new things.
But I also think you can definitely do a classic Monster of the Week story well. Like, I don't think if the quality of it is good, like, I don't think that's bad either. Like, if you had something, obviously it's different because it's a long time ago and it's quite a classic episode, but something of the caliber of the Tombs episode, Squeeze, if that was like now, that would still be a good episode, I think, because of how it does it. So you can definitely do those classic Monster of the Week episodes as well, but I think this one just didn't have the quality ultimately to sort of carry it through. But
would completely agree. We also got a message about Rush. Jen Shep got in touch saying, "So, I had not watched Rush in ages because it is not good. But after your discussion regarding grown-ass man Mulder's lingering look at a high school student, I had to revisit as I thought you must be mistaken. I was wrong. Gross. What were the writers thinking?" On a more positive note, upon rewatch, I did find Mulder and Scully's behaviour towards one another to be lighter, and dare I say, maybe even a little flirty in the post-New Year's Kiss era. Yeah, I mean, I think we discussed this in the episode. I wouldn't blame the writers too much. Well, I mean, you kind of got to. It's one of those where it was a different time, wasn't it? And I hate saying that because it feels like a get out for anyone. But
yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's been made, you know what I mean? Like at this point, so it's like there's not a lot. At the time, it's like it is gross, but also it's kind of one of those where it's just like back then it was kind of like, oh, you scamp.
That would have been his like roguish scamp like behavior.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Obviously, you have to look at everything in context. If you saw that on a TV show now, the character would not be Cool Man Mulder. He would be, who is this lecherous pervert?
He would be the villain.
Yeah, 100%. So, and that's good. Like that, we're getting to that point now where we don't have these gross. Like,
I think that's a great positive to take. Let's look at the positive of how that is. Like, I mean, it was never acceptable. That's the problem. You can go around in circles where you just like. Yeah. You can keep on going, oh yeah, well it's better now, and it was a bull back in the day. But then you just go, but it shouldn't have ever been that way. It should never have been that way.
It should have never been like that. But yeah, unfortunately, in the year 2000, they thought that's fine. I mean, I can't say anything. I'm a wrestling fan, and the 2000s was wrestling at its absolute peak worst in terms of like that kind of stuff. So yeah, yeah.
Another point, I mean, we've had a few tweets. I won't be able to get through them all, but Jen mentions it in her tweet and a few others did. We've got to pay much closer attention to the romantic aspects between Mulder and Scully, because apparently there was a bit of flirting after the New Year's kiss that we completely missed. I don't know whether it's because we're very unromantic. I don't know whether it's because we're not picking up on that nuance. But people... get in touch. If we miss something, you let us know, because I didn't see any flirting.
maybe I saw it in this one that they'd be more flirty. Maybe I saw it in. I'm starting to see it now. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe. But again, maybe I'm reading too much into it. I'm not too sure.
We will finish off on another episode review. Ray gets in touch and says, "Hey, just want to let you guys know it was a fun discussion with the Goldberg variation. I'm glad you both like it. I love that episode as well. And yeah, Shia LaBeouf looks the same even when he looked yellow," which is very true. Like, it literally hasn't aged. It hasn't aged today.
It's crazy. The only thing that's changed about Shia LaBeouf is his hair. Like, that just radically changes every year.
And his actions. Like...
The less said, the better on his recent action. But yeah. I mean, baby Shia LaBeouf. He's a sweet innocent boy. We'll leave it there.
Just a little cutie pie. Thank you so much for everyone for getting in touch. If you've got any reviews on the episodes that we've talked about or are going to talk about in the near future, or even if you just want to get in touch and say hi or give us a little bit of a tidbit that we've not picked up on over the season, get in touch with us on Twitter at Most Unwanted Pod, and we might read them out, or we'll definitely reply to you though.
I've just realised we missed out Critic's Files, so in a rare time, we're going to flip it round. We're going to have last minute Critic's Files.
It stinks.
Welcome to the Critic's Files.
So yeah, final thoughts then. What would you give this episode in terms of a grade?
It's a tough one to give because it probably wasn't like critical. I enjoyed it. I'm going to give it like a 7.5.
Bang on what I gave it, to be honest.
I think that's a very fair score for it.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing that absolutely set the world on fire, but a solid, fun episode. You know what I mean? 7.5. I think that's a good score.
Yes.
The rest of IMDb, at least, gave it an 8.1 from 3,071 reviews.
Which, if you take into effect of like them IMDb tending to be a little bit more positive than average, I think that's what around about online for where we're putting it.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah. That's everything from this week. So next week we're looking at an episode called Signs and Wonders. Any ideas what this is about? Well, we know.
No, let's keep the facade. Oh, I wonder what it could be. Signs and wonders. Well, wonders can be have religious connotations. Yeah. I've already watched it. I'm looking forward to discussing it.
Yeah, me too. And we might as well leave it there.
We'll save that till next week. That's next week's episode. You better wait. You got to eat your veg before you can get to the dessert. Is this the veg? Is your episode the veg? And I'm the meat.
Right. Let's never tell. Nobody tweet at us and tell us whose is the veg and whose is the dessert.
Our egos can't take it.
Yeah. We'll just be crippled with self-doubt after that.
All I'm saying is, everyone, you're almost finished. Just finish with that last green bean, and then next week you get the steak.
Why would you eat your vegetables and then a steak? That's crazy. I'm not having dinner in your house. We should probably leave it there.
Yeah, let's do it.
Bye, guys.